Hi everyone, good morning, good night, good afternoon, all over the world. Thank you for coming with us in our series of Magic PMO from PMO's officers from Barcelona, Spain. Thank you very much. Stuart Easton is the CEO for our Transparent Choice. Thank you very much. We want to say thank you. Thank you very much because he's a very, very busy man. Very, very, very busy. It was very, very hard to come with us because obviously his agenda is full, and so I want to say thank you because in this time he's going to sharing us why strategic alignment matters with the objective to improve project success rates. If you know, for all our members, all our followers in a PMO, one of the main gap that we found it in the reality is because the strategic is not alignment with top management. The strategic is by one hand, the rest of the company is in the other hand in a PMO, and that's a great mistake. The people like us, who are working every day in a PMO in several companies, and during these few past years, we found this day after day. It doesn't matter Spain, it doesn't matter Latin America, it doesn't matter other countries. I think it's a great gap that we should try to help to all companies since our work, since our vision as PM officers or PMO lead or PMO member. So, Stuart, thank you very much. Be welcome and please sharing us. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonardo, for such a gracious introduction. It has taken us months to get this event set up, and my apologies to everybody for taking so long. But it's a great pleasure to be here and to be sharing with the folks today. The first slide, actually, let's go back to that first slide for a second, because down here we have this thing where it says improve project success rates, and really that's what people think of in terms of one of the PMO's biggest jobs is to improve project success rates. But let's just take a minute and think about why that even matters, right? Why does it matter that we deliver projects successfully? And what does success mean? Well, it matters because your project portfolio exists for one reason and one reason only. And that reason is to deliver business value to the business, right? To deliver on the strategic goals of the business. And so whenever I say that, people will say, but what about compliance projects or legally required projects? Well, guess what? One of your strategic goals is to remain legally compliant. So even those projects exist purely to achieve that business goal. And so if you're doing projects that are not aligned with your business strategy, then you're wasting company resources and you are contributing to your company possibly missing the business goals. Right, so improving success rates, project success rates matters because those projects are how your organization delivers the change required to achieve the business goals. And we're going to talk about how to align your activity, your portfolio with strategy. Right, the strategic alignment matters. And it matters because obviously it helps achieve your goals, but it also matters because it's one of the things that you can do within the PMO that has the biggest impact, and it can be really quick. We've had customers go from, their first discussion with us to being completely done in 3 weeks. Right? There aren't many things as a PMO leader that you can do that will have this level of impact on the performance of your PMO, and that will just take weeks instead of months. If you're deploying PPM tool or you're training everybody in Prince2 or whatever methodology you like, that's typically something that you measure in months or even years. Whereas fixing this strategic alignment problem can be really, really quick. And that's why this is a really powerful webinar to attend. And I am going to include a little bit of a demo towards the end. Leonardo suggested we do that. And that will give you a flavor of how to actually implement this strategic alignment thing. But first of all, who am I and why should you even listen to me? So Transparent Choice has been doing this project prioritization thing for a number of years, and we've helped large companies, we've helped government departments, we've helped non-profits go through the prioritization problem. And everything that we do is based on real research. It's based on decision science, 40 years worth of decision science, in fact. So we know what works and we know what doesn't work. And we leverage that research to make sure that you have the best chance of getting a good result. And so it's really that work, that combination of taking the research and really digging into it and of turning that into real software and tools and supporting real organizations that means we have quite a lot of insight into this area. So back to the beginning, as Leonardo says, alignment really matters. Aligning the activity that you're doing with the strategy of the organization has a huge impact on project success rates. So now we could argue about whether we should even care whether a project finishes on time or finishes on budget. Goodness, people will be scratching their heads over that statement. The one that really matters is, do we achieve the business goals or not? Right? That's actually usually by far the most important thing that we should be thinking about. And oddly enough, it's often the one that people forget to measure. So if you're going to measure one thing, measure that. And projects that are well aligned with strategic goals of the organization are 57% more likely to achieve their business goals than projects that aren't. I'm going to pause so you can think about that number. That's a really big number, okay? 57% increase in your project success rate just by making sure all your projects are aligned with your corporate strategy. Now, it also improves success rates in terms of finishing on time and finishing on budgets by a pretty huge amount, as you can see on this slide. But for me, the most important one is increasing the number of times that you actually achieve your business goals. So strategic alignment really matters. This data comes from the PMI, from the Pulse of the Profession, I think it was. Also from the PMI is this data. So looking across all geographies, all industries, all portfolio types, 20% of the portfolio is waste. Now, from memory, the phrase in the report from the PMI was something like projects that should be stopped tomorrow. That's a pretty good definition of waste. Okay, so 1 in 5 of your projects should be stopped tomorrow. And the challenge is getting agreement about which projects they are, right? Because everyone is going to have a different view of which projects are most important. And that's the heart of this whole discussion, is that you have to get people to agree on what's important so that you can focus on those projects and you can stop doing the things that are not important. And remember, every project is important to somebody. But for the definition of portfolio management, for the purpose of portfolio management, important means it's helping us achieve our strategic goals, right? Our overall business goals. So 1 in 5 projects should be stopped tomorrow. But at the same time, half of the projects are not resourced properly. So this is the character, the cat in the hat. And this is one of my favorite books. I read it to my children even before they were born, and they still love it today, and they're 11 years old. So the picture before this is the cat is balancing all of those things that you see in the air. Basically he says, yeah, I can balance all of this stuff. I can keep it all up in the air. And then the next sentence is something like, that's what he said, then he fell on his head. Right? So when you try and do too much, you always eventually land on your head, everything falls on the ground, and it all goes horribly wrong. So half of projects are not resourced properly. Now, this is really cool because this starts to tell us what we should do, right? Put these last 3 slides together, and it starts to tell us the obvious thing to do to improve success rates. And I mean, you know, projects that deliver business value, that finish on time, that finish on budget, and certainly don't fail. So if you put those 3 slides together, we get something that looks a bit like this. The first thing we want to do is identify which projects are waste and just stop doing them. Right? Sounds pretty simple and pretty obvious. And then take the resources from those projects and invest them in the projects that are important, but that are not doing well, right? So these projects are going badly. So these projects are at waste, at risk. They are potential waste. And there we go. They're potential waste. And if we take the resources from the bottom part and put them into here, we can turn those projects around and turn them into good projects that we just need to keep supporting to make them happen. All right, so that sounds really, really simple. This is why we need to align our projects with strategy, because it frees up resources from the wasteful projects and helps us deliver those projects that are important more successfully, more of the time. But there's a problem, and it's a big problem, which is, how can I measure this thing called strategic alignment or business alignment or business value? People use different terms, and that's okay. But what does aligned mean? How can I measure it? And whose definition should I use? Okay, and then how can I get executives to buy in? Well, so the first thing here is that last question is in a way the easiest to solve. Because if you go through, and we'll come to the research in a minute, but if you use a process called AHP, that will take your executives through a process that results in them really all buying into the model. But if you think about whose definition, this is the hard one, right? So if you imagine going to your 5 top executives on Monday and ask them, what is strategic value, right? What is strategically important? What should we measure to select projects? Each one of them will give you an answer. And, some of those criteria, some of those goals might overlap, but some of them will be different, right? So they're not aligned. The executives aren't aligned usually. Very rare that we come across an executive team that is well aligned on this stuff. There'll be some alignment, but not good alignment. Right? There will be differences. But more scary, if you go back on Thursday of that same week and you ask the same people the same question, you'll get a different answer. Okay, so the problem here is that it's not. When you ask that question of people, the answer they give you is the things that are bothering them today, right now. And it doesn't necessarily reflect the strategic vision that they have for the business. It's the stuff that's causing them pain right now. So there's some. So how do we sort this out? Well, there's good news. Over the last 2 or 3 decades, there's been a lot of research into how to do this, how to prioritize projects, and how to align them with strategy. And this is academic research. So this isn't us. This isn't vendor research. This is independent research carried out in universities around the world. And the University of New South Wales, very kindly about 1.5 years ago, published a paper that pulled together all of this research into one paper where they looked at over 100 different methodologies that people had done research into. And they came to the conclusion that only 2 of those methods, right, and these are methods that some of you will probably be using, right? So this might be creating a weighted score in a spreadsheet or a prioritization matrix. It might be things like just having a presentation, right? Having a beauty parade where everybody presents, pitches their idea and pitch for funding for their idea. So everything as simple as that through to some really complicated methods that academics have dreamt up over the years. And of all of those methods, only 2 of them were found to be suitable for doing project prioritization, particularly in large organizations. One of those methods was called DEA, but we think that's kind of hard to use and we don't really focus on it. At Transparent Choice, we use AHP, which is the other of these 2 methodologies. And so because AHP is easier to use, that's kind of the best practice. That's it. There's not a debate about this. This is independent research that's come to this conclusion. The best way of doing project prioritization is to use this AHP process. Yet very few people have actually heard of it or know what it is. So as we get to the demo piece, we'll figure that out. Right? Well, I'll take you through what this process looks like, step by step, so that you know what you need to do to be successful. So to solve this problem of measurement and strategic alignment, we're going to use this. To solve this problem, we're going to use this thing called AHP. Now, what people often think they want to solve this strategic alignment and project prioritization problem is a picture that looks like this. And in fact, yes, this picture is really, really useful, this kind of dashboard. And so, the kind of thing that you would want, the kind of information that your executive team needs to make good decisions and to select projects that are aligned with strategy is they need to have some kind of picture of what value means, right? Some definition of what value means. They need to have some idea of cost. And so then they can start to identify projects that are good value for money and projects that are bad value for money. At the same time, they need to be able to track, budget and resource constraints, how many person days you're using, or if you have a particularly scarce resource in IT, it's usually a DBA or a system architect or something. That group's normally very constrained, very small. So you need to be able to track how much of those resources you've used. And you might have KPIs, key performance indicators you want to track, in this case, hard savings, and so on. Right, and some of the better PPM tools give you these pictures, but the problem with that is, almost without exception, that those PPM tools do not use this AHP process. And it turns out that the journey matters, right? This picture is far less important than how you get to this picture. Usually when we're talking to people early in the process, this is the piece that they say, oh, this is what we want. And once they've implemented it, I go back and ask, what was it that really added value in this whole process? And it's not the picture, it's this thing here, this value, this definition of value. How do you measure strategic alignment? And getting the executives aligned on that is the thing that is the most valuable. It's not the images, it's the process of getting your executives aligned. And we hear that time and again. So the journey matters. So we have to really define strategic alignment. And then, and only then, do we capture and evaluate the projects and then bring that together to create this nice dashboard. And the key thing, again, is this piece of defining strategic alignment. This is where the AHP method is very different to anything you'll see in the main PPM tools or in spreadsheets or prioritization matrix or any of those processes. So I'm just going to pause the screen sharing for a second while I move across into the software, and let's go and see what this process looks like. So just give me a few seconds here, and we'll see what that looks like. All right, let's see if we can get the sharing going again. All right, so here's the picture at the end of the process. This is the one that shows us, value and the cost and all the constraints and the budget and all these things all over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the journey of getting to this page and show you how to use this AHP tool to get there. I'm just going to close that. So step one is to work with your executives to define a set of business goals, strategic goals that become criteria in transparent choice. So these are the criteria that you're going to use to evaluate projects. Now, if you go to our website and search for project prioritization criteria, you'll find some really good resources there to help you go figure out how to get to the best criteria. And in fact, we recently recorded a webinar just on that topic. And so there is a trick to it, but basically what you're trying to do is capture the strategic drivers of the business as criteria. And those criteria can be made up of sub-criteria. So something like risk. Risk is such a high-level concept. Everybody is going to think of it differently. So you break it down into sub-criteria, in this case, organizational complexity, technical complexity, and actual technology risk. And so we're going to use these three things to measure how risky a project is. But the absolute key thing here is to go through a formal process with your leadership team, with your executive team, to get their definition of what's valuable. Okay, so this has to be their list of criteria, not yours. It shouldn't come from the PMO. The PMO should own the process. You should be the facilitator of a discussion, and but the business needs to own these criteria. Now, here's the important point. These criteria are not all born equal, right? They're not all equally important. And so what we have to do is go through a process of weighting those criteria. Now, when most people think of weighting criteria, what they think of is maybe having a meeting where the execs you put up on a whiteboard the list of criteria, and you say, what weight should we put on criterion 1 and what weight should we put on criterion 2? And the problem is whenever you do that, you're making two huge mistakes. The first mistake is that each individual is going to be not very good at making that decision, right? They're going to be influenced by what's going on right now, today. As soon as you give people multiple variables, you put up those 5 criteria or 10 criteria, and you say what weight should go on each one, you're asking someone to think about 10 variables all at once. And humans are terrible at that. We're so bad at it. So that's the first problem. And then the second problem is that when you do that in a group setting, everybody's going to sit there and wait for the most powerful person to speak first. And then they'll decide not what they really think the weighting should be. They'll decide, is this an important enough argument to take on the powerful person in the room? So in fact, you're not getting input from everybody. You're not getting buy-in from everybody. In fact, quite the opposite. Most people will leave the room thinking, well, we got weights on those criteria, but they don't represent my business. right? Those weights came from the boss, and I don't agree with them. And if they don't agree with them, they're not going to agree with the projects that you pick. And if they don't agree with the projects that you pick, they're not going to turn up as sponsors. They're not going to make resources available. And in fact, they may try and steal resources to do their own projects quietly in the background. Okay, so this buy-in step is absolutely crucial. Buying into the weighting of those criteria and getting a good set of criteria is the most important step in the entire project prioritization process, because this is where we define what alignment means. Okay, so all those charts are entirely meaningless unless you get this step right. So this is where we use this magic process called AHP. So what we can do is bring together your executives, and instead of saying what weight should we put on criterion 1, we're going to present them with pairs of criteria. So in this case, we've got the person on the right here is someone who's participating in the meeting. So this would be your CEO or VP of sales or whoever it is that's participating in this meeting in real time. And on the left is the meeting facilitator. So each of your participants, each of your senior leadership team is asked the question, which of these criteria is most important? Now, this is a simple question. It's a one-dimensional question. I can think about this sensibly, right? And I'm going to say that, in fact, cost reduction is more important. And it asks, how much more important? A little bit or a lot? Okay, so I'm going to say moderately. And what's happening when I do that over here on the left-hand side, as I change this vote, you'll see that that vote is updating in real time over here. But also notice that I can't see anybody else's votes down here until everybody has voted, and then the facilitator can reveal the votes to everybody. And this reveal is where the real magic starts to happen, because now we can notice that these two guys are more or less aligned, right? They're sort of vaguely in the same area. But this one, Brian, has a very different idea of which is more important. He thinks customer satisfaction is far more important. So the real trick with AHP is that it's reducing the bias in the decision, because we're presenting just pairs of criteria, right? And on our website we have a video why AHP is different. If you watch that, it'll go into the science of why this works. But for the purpose of today, it works. Okay, just take my word for it. Go watch the video if you're interested in why. So we've eliminated all sorts of biases here. And then this bit down here is all about buy-in and understanding. So we're going to ask Brian, what is it that makes you think customer satisfaction is more important than cost reduction? Because everybody else seems to think cost reduction is important. And we have a discussion about it, and we discover that actually Brian's a genius, right? He's absolutely got it right, that we can save more money and drive more revenue if we can just stop our customers leaving us. And so as a team, we say, yes, we're going to agree with Brian and move on to the next question. Okay, so the next question, and you'll notice that when I move this, the person giving their input, their screen changes automatically, right? So you're never out of sync. So we move on to the next question. The next question has two different criteria, and you go through the exact same process. You answer those questions, move on to the next one, and so on. All right, so every step we take is building understanding and agreement and consensus between the members of your executive team. And it's that process that is fundamentally different to anything else, to other ways of doing it. And it's that process that delivers the buy-in and the commitment to action that comes at the end when we're picking projects. So what you end up with is a map, pretty simple map, that shows the different criteria and how important they are. The bigger the area, the more important that is. But this map can be really useful for communicating with the rest of the organization and saying, hey everybody, this is what, as a strategic team, what we think is important. So now people making their day-to-day decisions can do it knowing what the executive team are trying to get to, right? Most organizations, when the executive team have gone off and spent a week off site coming up with a strategy, usually they come back and say, hey, we've got this vision statement and this mission statement. Isn't that wonderful? And nobody has an idea what to do with it, right? Nobody knows what to do with the vision statement. So when you have this map, it tells you exactly what you should be doing, right? When I'm making a decision, I should be thinking about how to differentiate my service, right? That's the biggest, strongest weighted criteria, and I should be thinking about that. And you know, if it's a trade-off between something that will differentiate the service and something that's complicated, I'm going to go ahead and differentiate the service, right? So it helps guide the day-to-day decision-making, not just in terms of selecting the projects, but actually implementing them. So we now know, we have that wonderful tape measure now where we can measure what's valuable, but we need some projects. So so one of the key things here is to try and get rid of the dreaded spreadsheet, right? Emailing spreadsheets around is a really good way of, number one, wasting time and energy, but more importantly, it's a really good way of introducing errors into your data. Okay, you know, have I used the latest version of this spreadsheet? Have I got the latest number? Did I copy and paste something into the wrong field or copy a number wrongly, right? So the data is difficult to work with and it's error prone. So wherever possible, we're going to collect data within the system, right? Within the tool, so that the data is always current and always the best data we can get. So that starts with collecting your project requests online. So you can define, you know, a nice little project request page, you know, a few drop downs, whatever data you want to collect. And then that project request drops into a Kanban. So it drops into the left-hand bucket of your Kanban. Now, if you've been working with Agile at all, you'll be very familiar with Kanbans. But just think of it as a way to represent the steps that you need to take your project through to evaluate it, right? So this is where we score it against criteria, for example, right? So we need to know, you know, how does it score on technical risk? Or, you know, how big is the project, or which department does it affect? You know, all of these things. We're going to collect all that data as we move from one step to the next. And as your projects are moving along, you know, as they go from one step to the next step, in the background, the software can trigger notifications, so emails that will go to either the person who requested the project just to say, hey, your project's moved on a bit, moved on to the next status, or it could go to, you could send an email to a senior project manager who would then do a risk assessment or something on that project. And so the data, you know, they would click on the notification on the email link and it'll open up a form and they can put the data straight into the tool. So we're not working with spreadsheets. We're not emailing spreadsheets around and copying, pasting and all that stuff. We're automating the data collection as much as we can and collecting the data and putting it straight into the tool, straight into the database. Now, this has another side effect, beneficial side effect, which is that we then get almost like a Facebook page for each project. So you have all of the data that we've collected down the left-hand side there. But on the right-hand side, we can see every change that's happened. We can see who's made the changes, what the value was, what it was changed to, you know, when they made the changes. So it's a full audit trail of everything that's happened to that project. And we can add to that audit trail. We can add a note. We can send email and we can embed forms into that email. So if we want to send somebody an email to do a project estimate or do a risk assessment, we go in, we type the email and we insert the risk assessment form into the email. And so when somebody fills in that form, it will the data will automatically flow into the decision, and we can track dependencies, and we can store documents in there as well. So this is so we're now getting a really good picture of as we go through these steps of our project. We're assessing it, we're measuring it against our criteria, we're scoring it against our criteria, and ultimately we're going to end up with a score for each project, which looks a bit like this. Okay, so each project gets a score, and we can see the different colors represent the different criteria, and so on. And so now we've got that score. This is the measure of how valuable that project is, how well aligned it is with strategy, or how much business value it delivers, or whatever phrase, whatever name you want to give this thing. This is the thing, when we say, when we talk about alignment, this is what we mean. And you'll see alignment is made up of a whole bunch of different criteria, right? So one of the most common mistakes that we see is that people will create a criterion to measure projects that's called strategic alignment. And then they'll sort of ask a question, is your project aligned with strategy or not? Well, guess what? Everybody is going to say, yes, my project's aligned with strategy. And they do that two ways. Number one, for them, for their own personal definition of strategy, it is aligned, okay? Because you don't have a formal definition of strategy. And number two, they want to get their project approved. So of course they're going to say yes. Right? They're not going to say no and have the project turned down. So you know, one of the most common mistakes that we see when we talk to organizations at first is they just have this kind of checkbox thing, or maybe it's just a simple scale. You know, does this project align with strategy? And unless you've gone through this process and really defined what strategy means, strategic alignment means, your question is meaningless. It adds no information at all because everybody says it's aligned. All right, so that gets us back. So now we have a good definition of what strategic, you know, which projects are well aligned and which ones are poorly aligned. And that brings us right back to our dashboard. Right, so now we can put together the dashboard. We've been through that journey. The executive team has really bought into the model. And so when they see value score here, they know what it means. They own it. They spent, you know, an hour or two talking about this thing, and they really believe it and trust it. And so what you can see here is, you know, high value, low cost projects live there. This is the cost axis. Low value, high cost projects live there. So good value for money, bad value for money. And I've set this up so that circles represent projects that are accepted, that have been accepted. Squares are projects that haven't been accepted, but they haven't been rejected. And crosses are projects that have been rejected. And as I said earlier, we want to be able to track the budget that we're spending. So you can see we're just a little bit over budget. We've got a budget of 8 million and we've spent 8.2. So it's gone red. We have a hard savings target. We've got a key performance indicator, in this case, hard savings. We have to save $20 million. Now, the story behind this particular demo is that, you know, this company is going to go bust if they don't save $20 million. So they have to do this, right? You can have all the strategic alignment in the world. If you don't save $20 million, we go bust, right? And then we've got a resource constraint here that we're going to watch, which is, in this case, is really simple. It's just the total person days, but you can have several different buckets that you track, buckets of resources that you track. And then you want to be able to see how is the portfolio balanced across the organization, whether it's by the requesting department or different areas or themes in your business. And you want to be able to see, you know, answer questions like, you know, if you look at this operational performance one, we know this operational performance team, they can absorb 2 projects a year. You know, they've got 500 people in the call center And every time we do a project, they have to train all those 500 people. And so they can absorb 2 projects a year. So we've got 4 projects, right? We need to get rid of 2 projects and reallocate the resources into different projects. All right, so we need to be able to balance the portfolio as well. So coming back to this, this is kind of the central chart. What we can see is that we've got projects down here that have been approved. Now this is where pet projects live, right? Low value, high cost, they're not adding much value at all. So let's go and get rid of one of those projects and let's kill it off. Now what's really interesting is, you know, most organizations we talk to have never killed a project, especially if it's a pet project owned by somebody senior. And what we get often is when they get to this stage, because they really believe in this score and they trust the data because they've gone through this process. Remember, how you get to this screen is far more important than this screen itself. Right? So because they've gone through that journey, they really trust this data. And what you often find is that people will kill their own pet projects. Right? This is unheard of. This is incredible. Right? So we've found one that we think is a pet project. We've killed it. But actually, we've now got a problem because we've missed this KPI, this hard savings target that we had. So what we can do, and again, what you want to be able to do is answer questions in real time on demand with the executive team. So I've created another chart here, which has got the value score, again, on this vertical axis, but the horizontal one this time is hard savings, right? Because we really need to hit that hard savings number. And what we can see really quickly is that there are a couple of projects out here which are not good value, right? They don't add a lot of strategic value, but they really add value along this one dimension of hard savings. And guess what? It's that project that we just eliminated. So let's go and add that back in, and we'll see what that does to our hard savings target. There we go. Add it back in, make it approved. There we go. And then you'll see all the numbers update. Bingo, we've hit our savings target. So suddenly we're aligning projects to our strategy. So we're getting more business value, right? We're stopping doing projects that aren't adding value. And crucially, we're picking projects that fit within the resource constraints that we have. You know, the easiest way to make projects fail is to try and do too many projects with too few resources, right? It's guaranteed you'll have project failure if you do that. And again, you know, what we're doing is we're driving alignment, a balance between maximizing value, but doing it within resources that we actually have. And you'll see here, actually, we're using quite a lot fewer resources than we could be. So maybe we can have a discussion with the executive team about, you know, can we reallocate some of those resources somewhere? Or can we increase the budget so that we can make use of the people that we have available, right? And again, when you're picking a portfolio, there's no perfect answer. It's all about the executives finding the right balance of, you know, hitting our goals, achieving our business goals, not spending too much money, making sure our projects are delivered on time, and so on, right? It's a balance of all those things. So I'm just going to pause again and move back to the slides. I only have one more slide, which is about getting executives to buy in. So, you know, this seems like a really sensible thing to do, right? To make sure we're aligning with strategy. And so somehow we're going to have to get the executive team to pay attention, because they may think they're already doing this, right? They're picking a portfolio of projects already, and they may not actually see the problem because they're too high up in the organization to see the consequences of getting it wrong. So there are several things that you can do to make this visible and to get executive support to solve this problem. The first one is to focus on that 20% waste number, right? Look at how much you're spending on projects each year and figure out what 20% of that is. It's a big number, right? And you know, spending that much money on stuff that you don't need to spend money on will get some people's attention. Excuse me. The second thing is to look at some projects that have actually failed in the last year or two and put a cost on those failures, and make sure you include the opportunity cost of a project. So if a project fails, the cost of that failure isn't just the money you spent on the project. The cost is also the fact that you didn't get the benefit. So if that project was due to generate $20 million in new revenue, then the cost of that project failing is the amount you spent trying to deliver it plus 20 million of lost revenue per year, right? So make it visible. And then talk to them about strategic alignment, increased strategic alignment. Most executives feel that they struggle, and there's data on this. 2/3 of executives roughly say that they really struggle to align to translate their strategy into action, right? So this is a really good way to help them do that, at least in the project sphere. So talk to them about increasing strategic alignment and how you can help. And I would always recommend early on in the process having a session with those executives where you walk them through a demo of something like we've just done. For an executive team, you probably walk through it slightly differently, but you walk through a demo a little bit like the one we just did and help them understand how it solves their problem. And remember, their problem is not the same as the PMO's problem. The executive's problem is, how do I know which projects to do? How do I get alignment between the executive members of the executive team? And how do I improve those project success rates? Right? Ultimately, they care about getting the business benefit, and they don't care about the process. They don't care about the how. So focus on the benefit for them. The improved visibility and better data.
Stuart, 5 minutes, please.
Yeah, we're done. That's perfect timing, actually, Leonardo. So we're done. So go out, engage your executives, and engage in a conversation that makes the value clear in their terms. So
okay, great. Too much information, only 1 hour, but it was an amazing presentation. Personally, okay, I wish to watch more things of the tool. Really, it was very, because we are following you, okay? We are watching both the screens. But well, I think the most people will love to play with this, no? Okay, so
thank you.
Great presentation. Thank you very much for the information. For all of our members and followers, remember, from PMO experience, we are sharing all information. Many information is free. I want to say thank you again, Stuart, because he's coming with us by free. Okay, he's giving us his time, preparing the presentation, preparing the webinar. Right now, we were testing before, so this is the time, and nothing is free in the world. So, Stuart, thank you very much for your time, your great presentation. So please, members, following us in PMOfficers Project Management Office Worldwide Professional Network is our LinkedIn group for continuing receive information. All information, repeat, is free. Please, sharing articles, comments is to growing between all of us in PMO, project management, product management, everything related about our profession. So just we are sharing Barcelona. This is the next week. This is our PMO experience first ever time. Yeah, we are sharing in several countries and several cities in the near future. So, Stuart, if people want to learn more, want to any demo, or they want to looking for more information about this wonderful tool or your services, where can we find you?
So my contact details are there on the screen. So it's stuart@transparentchoice.com. And what I would recommend people do actually is head on to Google and just type in project prioritization and look for the article that's the ultimate guide, project prioritization and selection, the ultimate guide. For most people, depending on your geography and your browsing history, for a lot of people, it comes up first on the list, pops up in a little box at the top. For other people, it could be halfway down the page or something, but usually it's pretty close to the front. So just hit Google, type in project prioritization, and look for the project prioritization and selection, the ultimate guide. And you can actually download a copy of that and just kind of use that as a manual to figure out how do you transform the effectiveness of your portfolio. And it's all about that project success, delivering business value.
I will be the first one. That's clear. Thank you very much. Eduardo he has a question. Well, first of all, it's a comment. No, many companies lose money because they don't have a portfolio department. Yeah, well, yeah, even more. They don't have a PMO, like a simple PMO. I'm not talking about PMO administrative or the control. No, I'm talking about a PMO in the right words. Now, we are not discuss which are the right PMO or not. No, this is not the time for that. So the question: some PMO even don't include in their function. Yes. So the question: what do you think, Stuart, is the big challenge to implement this in a company? How do you sell it to executive to get buy-in? That is my same question.
Right. Well, so I have some strong views on this and quite biased views, I think, because I have a very particular take on this, and I said it at the beginning of the talk. So in my view, your portfolio exists for one reason and one reason only, right? It's to deliver business value, that strategic business value. And so I think if you really want to get people thinking about a PMO, you need to be helping them think about the business value that they're not getting today, and to help them understand how that can happen, because most senior executives have no idea how projects are delivered. Right? They think little elves come out at night and suddenly a project gets done, right? They've got no clue. So don't talk to them about project methodologies and Gantt charts and risk registers and all that kind of stuff. Just don't go there. Talk to them about business value. What are the goals that you're trying to achieve, Mr. Senior Executive? Okay, what kind of things can help you get there? Okay, great. Now we understand what kinds of projects might be useful. Let's look at what's in the way. Why do projects fail? And there are 2 or 3 things that come up again and again when you actually do that. And so, and it's things like project prioritization, right? First of all, do the right projects. If you want business value, do the right projects. And then a second one would be to have to create an infrastructure around looking forward, not looking backwards. Okay, if you're a professional services company that charges your time, of course you have to do the accounting. But actually, it's much more important to be looking forward, to know how much work you need to get done to finish this project and deliver business value, and to understand, final pieces, to understand what's in the way, right? What are the main risks? What are the barriers to delivering that? So if you have and beneath that, it doesn't really matter what kind of methodology you're using, right? Whether you're a Prince fan or an Agile fan, or it doesn't really matter. If you're doing the basic stuff at the portfolio level, picking the right projects with the right resources, and then focusing everyone on delivering business value, then the methodology underneath it doesn't matter too much. So I'm a big fan of PMOs that are business oriented, and I think we need different names for PMOs that are business oriented and PMOs that are administrative PMOs, because those administrative PMOs aren't really adding strategic value. Yes, they are adding value, they're providing support, but it's not moving the business forward. It's just making sure some stuff gets done. Right? So that's my take. As I say, I'm quite biased. There are people who would argue with me on that, but I'm the one on the call, so I get to say my answer.
Yeah, no. That's the point. We must share from our experience, because we have many years in this business, and I think we know a little bit. No, this is only our opinion. So another question: in your opinion, who has to prioritize the project portfolio? If in this case, as you mentioned it, the senior management, they don't have no one idea about project management or about the PMOs, so
yeah, it's a good question. I mean, occasionally I will have a PMO come to me and ask the question, Stuart, how do I sell my portfolio to the business?
Yeah,
and I tell that person to resign immediately, because they've fundamentally misunderstood what the PMO is for. Right.
Sorry. Yeah, because I suffer a lot of things. Yeah. It's only a matter of time. Yeah.
Absolutely. Resign now. It's not going to end well. So the business has to pick the portfolio. The job of the PMO is to provide the structure so that they can do it well, right? So you don't expect them to go out and you wouldn't expect the executive team to go out and figure out what the right way to account for depreciation of laptops is, right? You have accountants to do that. But the executive team is there to provide oversight, guidance, and the strategic goals, financial goals, for example, right? Same thing with the PMO. You don't expect the executives to understand or to go away and research and figure out how they should be picking projects, or how they should be implementing projects, or how they should be measuring the progress of projects, right? Their job is to provide the business insight and the direction and to pick which projects to do, and to allocate, how much resource we can have and how much budget we can have. And the PMO needs to provide the scaffolding and the infrastructure that lets them make good decisions. Right? And that's really where the AHP piece comes in. So the PMO should own the process. The executives should own the criteria and that whole scoring model. And then the scoring of the projects themselves, in my view, should usually be done by subject matter experts. So if for example, you're measuring the risk of a project, well, let's not ask the VP of sales to have an opinion on that, because frankly, his opinion is not worth anything. Let's have a senior project manager do the risk assessment on that project. Someone who's been through fire and has learned from that. So different people own different bits of the process, but ultimately the people who own the final decision, it has to be the business. It has to be the leadership team.
Awesome. Yeah, in the reality, this is one of the huge problem. Yeah, because the senior management or top management don't understand exactly what we are talking about when we are leading a PMO or a project portfolio. Because in one company we can find two business unit directors, for example. One of them, they believe his own project is the best for the company, is the best project to give value to the company and a right, a profit, whatever. And the other guy, the other director in business unit, is going to say as well the same thing. So in this This happens every day, every time, everywhere. Okay, no,
Yeah.
so in a PMO, yeah, I don't know, an entity or the people who has to receive the projects to manage to deliver, and they never decide that. Okay,
Mhm.
even they are the specialists about this, but they never decide. They only receive the projects, perhaps both at the same time, without enough resources, without knowledge, without information. This is drama.
Yeah, and it's often very political, right? So everybody's trying to get their projects done. They don't care about anybody else, right? They just care about their own project. And so what, yeah, I'm thinking of one customer in particular where they had a spreadsheet-based prioritization system. So they had a really nice weighted spreadsheet, weighted scoring spreadsheet. They had all the data on project risks, on person hours, estimates of the level of investment required. They had all the data. And consistently, they were ending up with, 30% too many projects in the pipeline, and about 20% of the projects being just blatant pet projects.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had the data, they had the pretty pictures even, right? They had a really nice spreadsheet that converted everything into great pictures. But they were still getting it wrong. And the reason is because fundamentally they didn't understand this value score. The executives didn't believe that value score. So when you start running out of projects, all the people around the table go, I've got to get one more project in, right? And they all just try and jam one more project in.
Mm-hmm.
So that company used the exact same data. They imported it into the transparent choice tool. And the only real difference was that we did that AHP thing up front to get people to really think about, discuss, and agree on the definition of value. And so when this picture went up, when the dashboard went up, right, they already had a picture that had value and money. The difference this time is they believed it. And so now you've just changed the dynamic, because anyone who starts arguing and saying, this project's great, we should do this project, is going to look pretty silly, because everybody can see it's a rubbish project.
Mm-hmm.
So suddenly, instead of people fighting to get their project in no matter what, they're starting to think much more rationally about, on balance across the organization, how do we get the best value for money? And so it changes the dynamic from being one that's politics and my project must get done oriented into one that is all about delivering the strategic goals of the organization. And so that, that's what we need. Right? We want to get away from executives just trying to jam in their projects to executives coming together to pick a really powerful portfolio.
Yeah, it's high complex now to fight with this, because many times, or the most of the times, the project managers or portfolio managers or program managers, whoever, they only receive orders. You should do that.
Yep.
That's it. Period. You don't know if the project is really giving value to the organization, business unit, or entire company.
Mm-hmm.
The most of the times we never know.
Absolutely. And if you go through this process, everyone will know.
Yeah.
So when you go through this process, what you end up with, if you come back to this screen, what this is telling you. So let's go to our executive team. Here we go. Right. So what this is telling us is that the project that delivers most value is this one. And we know that it's one because it's really contributing to service differentiation.
Yeah, this is wonderful. I think this is very helpful. Very, very helpful.
Absolutely.
In a workshop, imagine, let's put in situation, okay? If we have a workshop with top manager, with seniors manager, and we do that, is very clear with all project portfolio to see for everyone very clear who is the prioritization from 1 to X, whatever, with this photo. Very easy. Everyone can understand that. It's my opinion.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. Yeah. And I think it's gonna help to avoid problems between directors, between business units. It's very easy to check during all project planning, all the process of the project, all the life of the projects and products. If we are talking about agility, okay, we never mentioned it before, but it's obviously we should put in mind, okay, from a PMO or PMO leader. Well, I don't know. It's amazing. These topics. I don't know. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Any more questions? Right there. More than an hour. I think it's very fast at the time, Stuart. Great webinar.
And thank you for having me and letting me, giving me the opportunity to come and share what little wisdom we've built up over the years with your audience. Just whether you work with Transparent Choice or you do something else, I just encourage everybody to go out and really look at project prioritization and try and get it right. It's the quickest and the biggest impact thing that as a PMO you can change.
Awesome. I'm going to check that. Perhaps later when we finish, and we are recording for all our audience and members, current and future members. We are recording the presentation, the webinar. We are sharing with all the PMO and project management community. Yeah, obviously for free. And we are sharing the slides. Please stay in touch with Stuart for the next one. I'm going to check Stuart, this project prioritization ultimate guide. Thank you very much, Stuart. Thank you very much again. I'm so glad you're coming with us. Thank you very much, really, because you are a very busy man. Stay in touch in the next time.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye now.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, community, PMOfficers community. Thank you. Stay in touch for the next webinars in our series for Magia PMO. Remember, we are sharing in Spanish, we are sharing in English. So stay with us, and don't miss the next one. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.